You've been sold a lie about productivity. You were told that the secret was more hours, more effort, more output, wake up earlier, push through, optimize, hustle. But here's the truth. Research shows that after just 90 minutes of sustained effort, cognitive performance drops sharply. That's not a mindset issue. It's a design limit of the conscious mind and the brain. Your conscious mind and brain don't thrive on constant drive. They thrive on a rhythm. So if you're feeling foggy, fried, somehow still behind, that's not a flaw. It's a signal that the system you're following was never built to work in the first place in that way. In this episode, we are unpacking why consciously doing less might be the most strategic thing you can do, and how subtraction, not effort, is the true unlock for high performance. Before we get into it, let me ask you something simple. When was the last time you felt clear-minded? Not busy, not efficient, but truly clear-minded. If this podcast has ever helped you feel that way, even for a few seconds, subscribe. Let this be part of your rhythm, not just your routine. This isn't just another mindset podcast. It's a return to what your mind, brain, and body are already trying to tell you. Let's keep going. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You wake up and immediately remember the email you forgot to send, the dentist appointment you need to reschedule, the presentation that still needs visual refresh, the laundry you swore you'd fold 2 days ago. You haven't even had your first sip of coffee, and your conscious mind and brain are already sprinting. And hey, maybe you're managing it all on paper, you show up, you meet deadlines, you even do the things that signal, I'm doing fine. But you still feel like you're behind. Like you're stuck inside some productivity escape. But you still feel like you're behind. Like you're stuck inside some productivity escape room where every solution opens another locked door of to-do lists. We're living in a culture where exhaustion is mistaken for excellence. You've been taught that performance is the goal, that feeling scattered is just the price of ambition. But here's what the science actually says. When your brain is overwhelmed, your conscious mind kicks into autopilot, and not the smart kind. The non-conscious mind then proceeds reluctantly, and I stress reluctantly, because your non-conscious mind likes wisdom. It starts running fast, familiar patterns, not because they're brilliant, not because they're energy efficient, but because they're established habits and they're driving you. And this is where the reluctance from the non-conscious mind comes in, or your wisdom comes in, or your intuition. These are the types of habits that are creating dysfunction in you and draining your energy, along with confusing your brain and your body. You default to these familiar scripts, scrolling, snapping, people-pleasing, while your focus and insightful decision-making clocks out. And what's the worst part? You're so used to it, you think it's just how life works. Here's a real-world example. A patient I work with once tried 3 different morning routines in a month. Journaling, cold showers, guided affirmations, the works. But her clarity just didn't improve because she never addressed the real root cause of the problem. She was sprinting from the moment she opened her eyes from dysfunctional habits. Her conscious mind wasn't disorganized, it was just totally overloaded. So just take a moment to reflect. If clarity isn't showing up in your life, what part of you is constantly driving you? This isn't about you disciplining yourself or about discipline. It's about bandwidth. And yelling at a system already maxed out is like blaming your phone for dying after 8 hours of non-stop use. Just like you need to recharge your cell phone, you need to recharge your conscious mind and brain. They get tired. Let's talk about what's happening under the surface. Your conscious mind and brain runs on ultradian cycles, which are roughly 90 minutes of high focus and optimal function, followed by a mandatory reset period, a bit like an internal power management system. These are different to your circadian rhythms, which are biological cycles that occur approximately every 24 hours. Your ultradian rhythm is like a mental high tide and low tide. You ride the wave, then recover. No exceptions. And this is necessary because the power coming from the non-conscious mind, your wisdom that drives things, flows through the conscious mind and into the brain. And it's so powerful, more than your physical brain can actually handle. So you do need these resets. Otherwise, your brain just gets drained. And what happens if you ignore that rhythm? Your brain doesn't punish you. It has a built-in protective response that is triggered to protect you. And that protection actually lands up flooding you with cortisol and adrenaline just to keep you functional. However, long periods of this burst of neurochemistry will put your psychoneurobiology into toxic stress, not healthy stress. And you start rereading the same paragraph 3 times. You stare at your inbox like it grew teeth. You think you're procrastinating, but really, you're actually maxed out. And when you keep pushing through those down cycles, you block access to the default mode network. Now, that name probably doesn't sound that big of a deal to some of you, but it's actually your brain's backstage crew and is activated when memory's been consolidated into thoughts, when we replay and resolve conflicts, when we tap into the non-conscious and generate creative insights, when we move into the zone where your wise mind gets time to shine. The thing is, that crew does need space, silence, downtime. No, that doesn't mean hours on a meditation pillow. It means taking a few minutes not to be in input mode. No scrolling, no checking, no managing, just pausing long enough for the thoughts behind your thoughts to surface. I call these thinker moments, where you switch off to the external and onto the internal. According to neuroplasticity research, both mine and others, we see that when you pause, your brain doesn't get lazy. It actually functions better. It integrates. It is in a healthier, more fertile state for the mind to build new mental pathways into the brain that will serve you better instead of reinforcing tired ones and draining your energy. And if you've practiced my neurocycle, this is the recheck phase in action. You pause, you ask, is what I'm thinking even true? Is this helping me? Can I see this in another way? And that simple moment of reflection begins beautiful, healthy rewiring. You start directing neuroplasticity. If you feel like you're stuck in reruns, it might be because your mind hasn't had time to write a new script. Let's talk about one of the sneakiest lies high performers fall for. You hit resistance, and instead of pausing, you reach for something new. You add another app, you add another new habit, you add an optimization tool, productivity framework, or shiny new system. But here's the kicker. Most of the time, your brain doesn't need more, it needs less. A 2021 study from the University of Virginia found that when people were given a chance to improve a design, over 80% instinctively added components, even when subtracting would have been way smarter. That's not just a design flaw. That's a conscious, cognitive default. Addition feels like you're being active. It tricks your conscious mind and brain into thinking you're solving something. But sometimes it's just an anxious noise disguised as action. Every new thing you add creates another open tab in your brain. And open tabs eat focus and eat energy, drain you. Subtraction, on the other hand, requires clarity and intuitive insight because you really got to think about it. It requires discomfort because you've got to let something go. It requires confronting the fear that stopping might make you look lazy or feel empty or maybe something will go wrong. Here's a little micro tool you can actually try, just to try this. Write down 3 things on your plate this week, okay? Now circle the one that matters most. Then, and here's the hard part, cross one off entirely. No replacement, just removal. Let your conscious mind and brain feel what it's like to do less on purpose. Editing isn't giving up, it's choosing what gets your energy and what doesn't. You make that decision. Ask yourself, what are you overcomplicating because it makes you feel safe? Let's be honest, willpower gets way too much credit. When we act like it's this noble, endless resource, when really it's more like your phone battery, and most of us are trying to run 5 apps at once with 2% left. Every time you resist a craving, bite your tongue, ignore a distraction, or make a tough decision, it drains a little more. And when it runs out, executive function crashes because the brain can't respond properly to the mind anymore. It's out of battery power. And that's when your conscious mind kicks into auto mode and you start doom scrolling, forget why you opened the fridge, or abandon your plan because you just don't feel like it. Fortunately, it's always searching out the dysfunctional auto modes that create pressure and drive you in the wrong direction and prompting us to change these. And disruptive patterns are changed through intuitive rhythm, not added force. That's the foundation of the neurocycle process, building intentional habits that don't just rely on motivation, but on meaningful, intelligent repetition, where you are learning to be wisely efficient. This is where flow comes in. Flow isn't some mystical zone you accidentally enter on a good day. It's a real, repeatable state that your psychoneurobiology wants to be in, at your mind, brain, body, and that your non-conscious mind is constantly trying to pull you into. It happens when challenge meets skill, distractions disappear, and your conscious mind and brain get to stop fighting themselves. You know the feeling. You've experienced this. You're writing, or you're coding, or you're painting, or you're solving, and suddenly 45 minutes disappear. You didn't will your way through it. You clicked in. You tuned in. So flow isn't about trying harder. It's about setting up conditions where effort becomes unnecessary. It means you're working with your non-conscious wise mind to run your brain more efficiently, to make things easier for you. Here's something to test. Block 90 minutes for something meaningful. Silence your phone, close the tabs, set a timer, and work until it ends, and then stop. No pushing through, no cramming. Let your brain experience what it feels like to work in sync, not survival, with your mind. What if your next breakthrough isn't about pushing more? What if it's about finally removing what's in your way? Now let's turn this into something that you can actually use. Here's a technique that'll help you apply everything we've covered so far, not just understand it, okay? So what you're going to do, it's really simple. It has a simple structure with a really big payoff. I love doing this. So pick a task that really matters to you, not something urgent, something that you love, that matters to you, that you're interested in, something that stretches you. Now set a timer for 90 minutes. That's your sprint window, the little window that you're going to use. Not 2 hours, not 45 minutes, 90. This is the ultradian rhythm we want to practice. So you're syncing with this ultradian rhythm. Now eliminate every avoidable distraction possible. Put your phone in another room or put it on do not disturb mode. Close the tabs on your computer. Tell someone you're unavailable, someone who always bugs you or something. Yes, really focus. Let yourself go all in. If your attention wanders, notice it without judgment. Don't judge yourself. Just bring it back. When the timer ends, stop. Even if you're mid-flow or you're on a roll. Why? Because flow is sustainable when it ends in clarity, not depletion. This isn't a productivity hack. It's a rhythmic alignment tool. I want you to get to become familiar with your ultradian rhythm. It teaches your conscious mind and body and brain what optimal output actually feels like and what clean stopping points feel like too. When I first started using this, I had to fight the urge to override the timer. I'd say, I'm in the zone, I'm just going to keep going. But pushing past that natural dip just led to a cognitive crash. I kind of lost the imagination. I got tired, and then an hour later, I was exhausted the rest of the day. My creativity dropped, and I'd forget what I'd even accomplished. Stopping while your brain is still clear, that's how you build constructive thoughts. It reinforces what I call the active reach, which is step 5 of my neurocycle. It's a small daily action that anchors a reconceptualized thought, not a life overhaul, a repeatable shift. Here's what usually happens. Day 1 feels totally weird. You're aware of how distracted you are. By day 3, your brain starts actually anticipating focus, so it starts listening to your mind. Day 5, you've actually started reconditioning your attention loop, but you're not all the way there. By day 6, you've broken the ice, and by day 63, this is an intelligent, established habit. The sprint isn't just about output. It's about emotional regulation, clarity, dopamine reset, neurochemical balance, insightful cognitive endurance. It gives your conscious mind and brain exactly what it needs. Single task immersion followed by deliberate disengagement. So you want to break the cycle of rushing and crashing. Don't wait until burnout to start resting. Give your brain a new rhythm to follow. So literally going to train your brain with your mind into a new rhythm to follow. One of my patients, a mother of 2 and a full-time creative director, used this approach to reclaim her focus. She blocked 90-minute windows during her children's school hours, committed to no meetings, and tracked what happened. She expected to feel frustrated or distracted. At first she did, but within 3 to 5 days, she described it as the first time in months I felt like my thoughts had a beginning, a middle, and an end. By 63 days, she had a habit. For those who say, but I don't have 90 minutes, I do hear you. I know how busy you can be. Then try 45 or try 30. Even that is a massive upgrade from toggling between tabs and conversations and apps every few seconds. We can't multitask. Our conscious mind and brain do not do well on multitasking. The goal isn't perfection. It's protection of your brain and your conscious mind's ability to sustain attention and find completion. That's the shift. So try this 90-minute thing once a day for 5 days. Then check in. Was I more effective? Was I less drained? Did I actually finish the things that matter? You will find days 6 to 63 a welcome space once you've got through the first few days. If you're still skeptical, that's okay. But that's also a sign that your conscious mind is not convinced yet and the brain survival system is just responding to what your conscious mind's telling it. So you're not building discipline here. You're building evidence that clarity comes from rhythm and not force. Focus isn't a superpower, it's a rhythm. And rest isn't what you earn at the end of effort, it's what makes effort possible in the first place. If you're waiting to be done before you recover, you will never recover. You're not weak for needing a break. You're wise for honoring the architecture of your mind. Okay, it's time to drop the pressure for a second. I want to be clear. You are not being lazy. You're not scattered. You're not behind. You're a person trying to think clearly in a world that is constantly encouraging the interruptions of that level of clarity. And this is common. We all experience this. I experience this. Your brain just was not built for inboxes that never close, or calendars with no blank spaces, or productivity tools and systems that make you feel like a failure by 10 a.m. because they're just too many for you to even do. So if your mind feels chaotic, or your energy feels thin, or your memory feels like it's glitching, that's your system waving a flag. You're getting a signal from your non-conscious mind. Pay attention. I remember speaking to a teacher who had been trying to maintain classroom focus while managing her own children's remote learning at home. She told me she started to question if she had early cognitive decline because she couldn't remember the last 10 minutes of a podcast, let alone what she needed for the grocery store. What she was experiencing wasn't memory loss, it was mental overload. Her brain was buffering like a web page with too many tabs open. Another woman I worked with was juggling caregiving, remote work, and managing her own autoimmune condition. She wasn't sleeping, she wasn't eating properly, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd had 30 minutes without an interruption. Can you imagine that? I'm sure you can. Her mind didn't need a mindset shift. It needed room. It needed space. It needed permission to not perform. Your internal rhythm is buried. But the good news, it's retrievable. Your clarity isn't completely lost. It's just waiting for a quieter room. So try this. Take one 5-minute think a moment window today. No agenda, no goal. Just a pause. That's it. See what your mind does when it's not performing. And then tomorrow, try it again. 5-minute, think a moment. Switch off to the external, switch on to the internal, and just see what's going on. This is how we rebuild or start the process of rebuilding clarity. Not with pressure, but with patterns. So you can start with the 5 minutes, and then you can move to the 90-minute plan that I gave you earlier on. Let's talk for a moment about grit. You've probably been praised for it. Maybe even built your identity around it. Push, persist, grit your way through. But here's the hard truth. Grit without rhythm is just self-destruction in a nicer outfit. We glorify effort, but effort without recalibration leads to diminishing returns. You do not become more effective, you become more exhausted. And there's science behind this. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that is activated with complex thinking and decision making, will get tired fast. When you push past its capacity, you don't get sharper, you get tunnel vision. You start making mistakes, you forget what matters. Because your conscious mind has to work through your frontal lobe. And it's not going to be able to get through there because your frontal lobe's not operating properly. Grit in those moments really doesn't help. It hurts. Because the very thing you think is powering your success is now hijacking your ability to recover. I once coached someone who was the definition of a high achiever. Startup founder, 12-hour days, back-to-back wins, until suddenly nothing. Brain fog, panic attacks, a complete freeze. The more she pushed, the worse it got. It wasn't a mindset problem, it was a rhythm collapse. We had to retrain her psychoneurobiology to recognize that pause isn't failure, it's fuel. When she started using 45-minute sprints with 15-minute walk breaks plus 1-minute thinker moments multiple times a day, she got more done in 4 hours than she used to in 10. And she stopped resenting her work. Discipline is still valuable, but not when it is divorced from recovery. Ask yourself this question. Am I showing up with strategy or just survival mode stamina? High performers burn out not because they're weak, but because they confuse grit with growth. True growth requires the courage to stop when your system says, not now. The world does not need any more burnt out brilliance. It needs people who know when to push and when to pivot. And that's not quitting. That's intelligence. We started with the myth of more. We've talked about why your brain can't run on effort alone, how ultradian rhythms, the default mode network, pattern memory, and intelligent habit building shape your output, why flow is about conditions, not grit, and how subtraction and not addition is the smarter path to clarity. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't need to bulldoze your way to productivity. You need to relearn your rhythm. You don't get there by adding a new strategy. You get there by listening to what your system is already signaling. What's the one thing I can remove today to make space for what matters? If your mental signal feels jammed, it's not because clarity is gone. It's because the noise got louder than your knowing. Knowing is your limit. Knowing when you're at capacity and it's time to take a step back, that's the knowing we need. Your next step might not be a task, it might be a subtraction. Your nervous system was designed for restoration and your mind was built for insight. You just have to give both a window to work with. And if all you do today is pause and ask yourself, what is my rhythm asking for? That's enough. Let's clear something up. Zoning out isn't the same as recharging. We live in a culture that treats recovery like a luxury, and when we finally try to rest and restore, we default to passive habits, scrolling, binging, swiping, but these don't actually restore the mind-brain-body connection. They stimulate it. Your mind may feel distracted after 3 hours on TikTok, but that doesn't mean it rested. That means it got flooded with imbalanced neurochemistry with no downregulation, like revving an engine in neutral. Real recovery is different. It engages the default mode network, the part of your brain that lights up when you're walking, reflecting, daydreaming, when you're switching off to the external and switching onto the internal. That space is where memory consolidation happens, insight happens, emotional regulation happens. It's the clearinghouse your brain desperately needs after a high output day. I worked with a client recently who kept saying, I rest all the time. I watched 3 episodes of TV last night, but she still woke up exhausted. Why? Because her mind never turned inward. It never got still enough to process. It didn't restore into a rhythm. When we swapped 30 minutes of nightly screen time with a quiet wind-down routine, no phone, no lights, reading fiction, she said she felt like her brain finally exhaled. Deep breath. That's recovery. Not escape, not distraction, not numbing. It's presence, stillness, space. Here's a quick test. After you rest, do you feel clearer or heavier? If it's heavier, it wasn't rest. It was just noise with better branding. Real restorative rest sharpens you. It doesn't sedate you. This doesn't mean that you can't enjoy Netflix. I love Netflix. Or social media. But don't confuse those with actual mental reset, because they really aren't. Treat them like dessert, not dinner. Try giving your conscious mind and brain just 5 minutes tonight of true stillness. No screen, no noise, just breathe, light movement or reflection, turn inward. Your brain won't resist it. It will thank you. Trust me, I know this. I've been in this field for long enough, 40 years. Because real restoration isn't indulgence, it's maintenance. Listening to this podcast isn't a passive act. It means your mind is already doing something rare in today's world, pausing long enough to hear itself. That alone is a reconceptualization moment. When I wrote Help in a Hurry, I wasn't trying to add more advice to the pile. I wanted to create something you could reach for when your system is too maxed out to even think straight. When the self-help shelf feels overwhelming, when 21 or 63 steps feels laughable. This book is for the moments when you don't have time to figure out what's wrong. You can't explain why you feel the way you do. You just need something that works, fast, kind, and grounded. And inside this book, you'll find micro practices that match how your mind actually builds change into your brain, real tools for emotional mess, not just emotional theory, daily shifts that are short, repeatable, and neurologically sound. And if you pre-order now, you'll get over $900 in bonuses. I won't list them all here, but they include tools I've never shared before, video trainings, downloads, and practical walkthroughs for creating mental clarity under pressure. You can find all of this at helpinahurrybook.com. If this episode gave you something to think about, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, revisit it, use it. You don't need permission to pause. You just need space. And that's what this rhythm gives you. Until next time, protect your rhythm, question your hustle, and give your brain the quiet it has been asking for all along.